All right, Kevin Mead, welcome to the Real Results Podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Levi. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so do you want to explain to the viewers a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, for sure. So I do CRM management, which basically means I track data about sales, marketing, and customer success for companies. And that can look like a lot of different things, but it's basically taking a business from, everyday interactions and building data points about every single step in the process.
Okay, so data interactions, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So, we're meeting right now. This is a meeting, right?
Yeah.
Like this isn't a sales meeting, but it's, us chatting, right? And that's, two people interacting. So I'll go and I'll track, hey, I met with Levi today. And that's what a lot of businesses are, at least on the sales side, is interacting, going to golf events, seeing someone on a Zoom. That's an interaction and a touch point. And same thing when you help someone with like customer success. A lot of those are on meetings. And so that starts to build a relationship with a customer, right? Either someone you haven't sold to or someone you already have.
Yeah.
And so a lot of companies don't track these relationships, and it makes it really difficult to figure out, things about that specific relationship when someone moves on to another company or learn things about the general business. And so what we tend to do is we do a lot of work where we, track the data, and then we paint a picture of what are the things about the business that are really good and the things that are really bad. Yeah. And we start fixing them.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit old school because I have literally a spreadsheet, like just a Microsoft spreadsheet
Most
about all my client relationships. What's the difference between that and, maybe a big company that might have a CRM or what you would implement?
Yeah, so there's not a huge difference in like what you're doing, right? You're tracking who you're talking to and you're, keeping record of it. I think a lot of it comes from like how well you preserve that and like if it is interacting with your other systems, right? And so, a CRM just lasts a little bit longer and doesn't get lost as much, but the methodology doesn't change, right? The big thing that starts to change is you start using the data in different ways, right? And you're starting to collaborate with more people. And so as you have, a bigger team that's interacting on your work and on your, let's say you have someone where you have one salesperson and they are doing all the interaction. They're asking what are the problems that someone has with, your company. Well, for your customers, the person doing the fulfillment for your company, now they have to go to that spreadsheet, right? Yeah. And they need to be shared and in the know about everything. And so as you get bigger, everyone has a spreadsheet. They all have their own spreadsheet. And nothing is tracked in a way that's centralized and saved to the entire company. And the other piece of that is, the salesperson, has a certain way they want to track their stuff, right? Yeah. And maybe another salesperson comes along and they want to have their own spreadsheet. And so what you kind of create is chaos and mayhem where everyone's tracking things in their own way. And there's no standardized way to like track how the business makes money. Right. And which makes it really hard to scale, but it also makes it really hard to work with other people. And so you kind of get these, they call them silos, but you get, sales, even if they're doing all the same processes as a team, their marketing team doesn't work well with them at all, or their service team doesn't work well with them. And so when you put it all in one place, then you can start making it easy that everyone's kind of rowing in the same direction.
That's brilliant because, I have so many people that I work with who are just all over the place, you know what I mean? Have spreadsheets, don't really keep track of, who they bring on, right? Because a lot about what we do is we create video content to get people to build relationships online, right? And so what I ultimately want is for people to do that, people to succeed in that, right? And I feel like a CRM from the companies that I've worked with that had a CRM are the most successful because they are taking all their leads that they're getting from our video content, putting it into the CRM. That way now they have an organized system, right? So it kind of like integrates into that a little bit. Do you want to talk about how maybe advertising works with the CRM?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of the stuff I tend to see when I'm working with clients.
By the way, just Could you say, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
You just say what a CRM stands for and what
A customer relationship management system.
Right.
And so, acronyms are fun. With advertising, a lot of the work I tend to do is attribution, right? And it's that, people are working with you as a video, production agency, right? And it's something they're trying, but they probably have tried many, many, many things before, right?
Yeah.
And they're also going to take the piece of content that you make and they're going to put it on Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, and maybe they have other videos or other ebooks and stuff like that. And so you kind of build this like vast ecosystem of channels, pieces of content, and they all have different impacts on how well you advertise, right? Yeah. And when you're spending so much money on advertising, as many companies are doing, you start getting, a spot where you are just wasting money on not knowing what works, right?
Yeah.
Because you could, work with you and have a huge lift, but how do you know that it's just your video, right? Mm-hmm. Because if it's just your video, I'm going to buy another video, right? But but there's also, so many touch points, right? Someone could, come to the website. The website looks fantastic. They then watch a video, which then, helps them convert. But there's also an ebook, a salesperson. And so you kind of build this like map of what works. Yeah. And you often find that if you can track it well, you can find ways to like play Moneyball with your advertising.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It makes sense why you and I get along so well. We've hung out a few times, but yeah, like really what you and I do goes hand in hand. It really is all about the relationship. And it all goes down to emotions, right? And so people just pour money into advertising, expecting, customers to just want to buy right away. Advertising doesn't work like that. You need to invest in the emotion that you are evoking on your brand, and you need to invest in that relationship, right? It all goes down to that. People want to have a personal connection with you before they buy. How do you do that, right? High quality video content helps. I honestly, I have the bold thing that I say, but I always say invest more into the video content, the relationship management than you invest in just pouring money into advertisements, right? Mm-hmm. Because the reality is if you don't have that emotional bond, the money you're spending on advertising isn't going to work. It doesn't matter if you put $100,000, $1 million on advertising. If that content sucks, you're not going to get any results from it, no matter how much money. So dial it back. Think about what people truly want. They want that emotional connection. They want to have a bond with you. They want to feel like they know you on a personal level, right? High quality video content helps with that. Helps with that kind of, emotional connection, right? In the CRM as well, right? So that's great. What is your company called, by the way, just for the viewers listening? We didn't even get into that.
Yeah, it's called Era Bond. I'm wearing the shirt. It basically means Era, last long, Bond, bring teams together. So we build long-lasting tools that bring people together.
I love that.
Yep.
So you build tools, actually.
Yeah, I would say so.
So you're not just in HubSpot.
We build around HubSpot in many situations. So HubSpot's kind of like our core, but HubSpot is a really versatile tool at working with other tools. Yeah. And so, it's kind of what I was saying about the sheets. I don't really I want you to track stuff in HubSpot. Mm-hmm. That's my preference. But it's more about tracking something somewhere that everyone has access to, right?
Dude, some people don't even track that.
And exactly, right? Yeah. And so we often build, tools where people maybe are they're integrated with another system, right? Yeah. So one of my clients runs off of, so they were on HubSpot, they're now on Salesforce, but they also run on a tool to do shipments, right? And so that creates a lot of headaches because finance and sales and fulfillment don't work together because they're in completely different systems. And so something I've done is I integrate those. I make sure that the data in one place is in another as well. And that builds alignment between those two teams.
Do you work with Derek at all, by the way?
He refers some stuff to me. Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm saying I just had a shoot with him. I work with him pretty often. it sounds like what he does is a little bit similar to yours.
It's very similar. Yep.
Integrating tools and systems, right?
Yeah, it's very similar. He does a lot more like diagnostic and strategy in terms of like and making those processes. I would say I'm a little bit more of like the action arm of that and the like the actual building. So like he'll scope something out and say, hey, here's a problem that you are like bleeding money in.
Yeah.
And then I will say, okay, how do we like actually build a tool or an integration or a way of doing this where you're tracking everything of this so that you can watch it all the time?
Right.
So we're very similar.
And so like, what are the main pain points that people have when they go to you?
Yeah. So there's a lot. I cover a lot of ground. I would say handoffs of departments is a huge one. I would say like that's one of the easiest ones to solve. And so you'll see that in someone watches a video, they download a piece of content. No one calls them because no one ever sent that lead to sales, right? That is probably the easiest thing to solve in terms of like making more money. And that's a huge one that people don't pay a lot of attention to. And it's just because, systems don't talk. They don't have a process for handling leads.
Yeah.
A huge one is marketing wants to do everything on their own. So that's a huge one. And so you'll find like these pockets of like handoffs where it's like these teams both own this part of this, like they own the part of the process. So sales to customer success or like fulfillment, huge one. It's small things like, sales didn't ask for them to pay the invoice and now we haven't gotten paid in, forever.
Even on LinkedIn, I see, people who view a profile even. Nobody reaches out to them.
Yep.
Or sends them a message, right? No one reaches back out to them or sends them an email, says, hey, I was interested. Never gets an email back. It's those like little things that people just don't like, I guess, think about. Or maybe a new prospect, will like their story. Be like, hey, even just a simple, hey, I saw you liked our story. I saw your business. I love what you do. Yep. Would love to like just talk and collaborate. Because if people are engaging with their stuff, we know there's some interest there, right? Yep. That's where what you do comes in handy because you take all those little small things that people aren't doing that they should be doing and saying, hey, we need to start implementing this in our system because this could bring our sales up double, right?
Yeah. I mean, that stuff works. Like I run my entire like business development off posting stuff on LinkedIn, looking at who likes it and reaching out. And
exactly.
But it's
also, people don't do that, man. It really is a mistake.
Yeah, and I think it's also as you start talking about like we're talking about me doing it, right? And like I have an incentive to it. It's my business, right? But then you get into like team management and like accountability. And that's where this stuff really matters because you want your team to be, motivated by the culture, by the goals. And it just doesn't always work out that way. Yeah. And you need to make sure that, you're managing towards the actual outcomes and the inputs that get those outcomes.
Yeah.
And so, if you're not tracking, hey, how many people have my salespeople reached out to on LinkedIn? They'll tell you the biggest number possible. And then you'll, go a month and you'll be like, why do we have no sales? And it's because they haven't reached out to anyone. Right?
How do you get people, like if you're a business owner, right? And you have employees, how do you get them? I mean, you're never going to get them as passionate as you as the business owner, you know what I mean? But how do you get them passionate enough to be like, okay, we need to start reaching out to these people?
Yeah, it's a big problem. I would say, at least in my business, where you're asking people to say, "I want you to be held accountable," and like truthfully, like I'm a hard worker. I hate being held accountable, right? And like to others, like it sucks, right? And so like it's a very human thing to like not want to be tracked, and a lot of people push back on it, right? You have to really make it better for them. And that's what's really tough is like a lot of people look at, adoption of a tool. Because what will happen is people will like buy a new CRM. They'll be like, this is going to change everything about how we do our business. We're going to track everything. 6 months goes by, no one uses it. And you have to align the incentives that they have with what you want them to do. And that's really challenging. What I find is helpful is you make a process that they dread much easier, and you do it in the tool you want them to use, right? So one I'll do very often is I'll make contracting really easy for like a sales team, because the worst thing is you get off the call with someone who wants to buy, and now you have to go to Microsoft Word, copy a template, like rearrange everything, and now you're 2 hours in to get like this very specific contract, and like you could have closed the deal already, right? And those little things add up and make people really not like doing their work. And so if you solve one of those small problems, people will love you. They will want to use your tool. And the benefit is you get accountability on like what is actually being tracked.
Yeah. I see so many companies, just like trying to satisfy the boss, trying to make the boss happier. And if you have that culture in the long term, in my opinion, I don't think it's going to work, right? I always base everything I do around the mission. If your company does not have a strong mission, the employees are not going to be passionate, right? They're not going to go that extra mile and do those extra things that you want them to do, like what we were talking about earlier, sending that message on LinkedIn, right? So I just had a shoot yesterday with A Safe Pool. Their mission is, saving lives of children, right? They build pool fences, right? They could just be like, yeah, we're just trying to sell fences. Yeah. We just want to make money. But no, like this is what we focus on with them, is not making anything about a brand, a name, anything like that. We just want to focus on the holistic mission. And I know whenever I walk into their office, I see all of their employees are super passionate about what they do. The owners take care of them really well, but it is all about saving lives. And the work is fulfilling when you're working with them, even though I'm not a full-time employee there, even though I'm just hired by them, right? I still love working for them because it really is about saving lives, right? And a lot of the other companies I work with too, we focus on that holistic mission. And that's how you get people passionate, right? Yep. Derek talks about that a lot. He's like, you have to, you can't just have this whole system where everyone's just trying to satisfy the other person. You see that in like corporate, BS, like all that, all those corporate companies create that culture, and it's just not successful long term. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we our mission is to leave people better off with excellent processes. And the leave people better off is like a big one. It's also one of our values. Nice. And the people is what matters. We have because I think something that we kind of realize is if we do things really well and we like increase percentages of how much a business is growing on just one department, right? Someone's getting a promotion. All right. And then on the other side, someone hires us and we suck and we're not passionate. They're fired, and that's someone's livelihood, right? And that's also someone's career, and how much they can go far in their career. It also impacts their families, right? And so, I wish I could say this happens every single time I work with someone, but like one of our best customers, he got hired 2 years ago. HubSpot was a mess. Brought us in. We started tracking every single department, and in the first 2 months. We increased his conversion on just one process by 24%. Wow. And we reduced the time it took per candidate, their recruiting company, by 64%. So they were basically 3x faster in terms of processing things for this department. And then he had us do the next one. And what's wild is that customer, our client that is one of my old friends, he now has 5% equity in the company in a multi-million-dollar company. And it's because, a lot of his work and a lot of his leadership, but we have helped with that. And so that's one that fires us up. Man. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. So I have a question. So are you dealing with the higher ups, I guess, in the company mostly, or?
It depends. The one thing is we're kind of a Swiss Army knife. So we work with a lot of different types of people. Yeah. I would say we work best with chief operating officers. Those are the Derricks. Yeah. Where someone has authority. They know what needs to get fixed, but they don't know how to fix it, or maybe just can't because it's hard. So that customer who, got the 5%, he's the VP of operations for the company.
Yeah.
And then one of our other very successful company or clients is like the chief of staff and head of business operations, knows all the problems, knows all the people involved in all the problems, and knows like, hey, this person complains about this all the time, right?
Yeah.
But doesn't really have like the tools to fix them. Right. And so with in those situations, that helps us a lot, where someone's like, hey, I'm going to give you the keys to the car, right? Please help me and help me with these specific things. You have my sign off. Go talk to the people who are actually similar to Derek, who are actually doing these things, come back with a solution, build it.
Nice.
And that's where things work really well. Where things don't work really well is where someone like doesn't really know what they need help with. They don't have like a specific problem, or they just come with like, I need to use HubSpot more, right? We can't help as much in those situations. Right. And that authority is also really important. Like if someone can't make the final call of like, we're going to do this and we're going to change this entire way we do stuff, it makes it really hard to like enact change. And that's where, the people element of everything comes in.
You talk about saving time a lot, right? And I always think about this, especially when I mean, we've mentioned Derek a million times. But when I work with Derek, he talks about this a lot. It's like, no matter how much time you save, people always tend to fill up that 40 hours
of course.
Exactly that they're allotted for, right? And it seems like they're almost getting the same amount of work done, just like kind of filling the time in between. How do you deal with that? If you are a COO, right? How do you deal with, is it a system change, right? Like, do you have to say, okay, now instead of just the 40-hour week, if you get your work done earlier, we'll reward you with, giving your time back? Or how do you change that system?
That's a great question. I have wanted to answer that question for a long time, because I'm not a believer in like, you should be like locked to your desk like all the time. A big reason I want to run a company is so that I can do other things, right? And work, I think it's the Parkinson law. It's like it expands to consume the time you're allotted, basically. Yeah. And I've even seen it like, often I'll like go travel for like a while, and I'll work while I travel, and I'll work like half the time, and I'll get everything done because I'm probably a little stressed and like it's a priority, but I'll get it done, right? And so it's interesting as we, have like a lot of new developments in technology, right? With AI, with automation, I've always had that question of like, can you build a business where like everyone's successful and like we're not working like we're not working a ton, in the sense of like we're stressed, or like, how do you combat those norms? It's really challenging. And especially when you like start getting into like the dollars and cents of it all, right? Because it's because you want to keep working on stuff, and you want to keep, it's also the question of like, if you start slowing down, right, and you're not filling that time, are you accomplishing the mission, right? Work never ends. And so you have to find a balance there. I think the other thing that's funny is like when with one of my like really first clients, where they like gave me the keys to the car, I automated so much. Like I automated their recruiting. They were a marketplace like W9, like Uber. I automated all of that process. I automated their invoicing and their like accounts payable. And, I was really proud of it. And it did have an impact. But what was hilarious about it is like, you think about it and it's like 5 minutes per task, right? You add that all up, it saves you 30 grand, right? And, that's not the most impressive case study when you just paid someone a salary to solve this problem, right? Yeah. And so time savings, honestly, aren't the best way to think about like ROI when you're looking at this stuff. What you want to start looking at is like, at least when a business, the one that I've started to look at more is like velocity, or like speed at which you're bringing revenue into the company. Okay. And so one that I'll often look at is like deal velocity or sales velocity, which is like on a daily basis, how much revenue are we bringing into the company?
Right. Yeah.
And what's funny is you'll start to see like sales cycle. And so when we get into like marketing, it's even more interesting, because when a marketing department like starts to grow or starts to like be started, right? They're competing against sales. Sales is a bigger budget, has so many more headcount. Like they just can't compete, truthfully, right? So they start to like compete on revenue, and they're just always gonna not be as good as sales, because sales has so much more time, so much more headcount.
Right.
And in one of my first jobs, I saw that, and I was like, how do I even compete? I have no budget. Like, how do I get executives to like think this is valuable?
Right.
So I started competing on the time at which we closed deals, not the speed, like not the revenue, right? And what happened was I started giving leads that knew our brand, knew our mission, were interested, and I gave those to sales, and I cut the sales cycle in half.
Wow.
And the executives started listening to me very quickly, and started wanting to give more budget, right?
Awesome.
And so I think when you're looking at these things, you need to think of it as like an organization, right? Of like, how do we as a team go faster? Because there are companies that, in the same time of a month, do the same revenue as a competitor that does it in a year, right?
Yeah.
And so that's how you should think about it, is like, how do we run faster as a team towards our goal?
Yeah.
Rather than just the time savings.
I love that, dude. That's awesome, man. I want to kind of wrap up here, but you mentioned a little earlier that popped a little question in my mind about AI.
Yep.
I want to talk about that. Where do you see that coming with your business and CRM systems? Are you using AI?
Yeah. I started looking into it a little bit more recently. I got to be honest, I'm pretty bearish in general on AI at the moment. I'm a builder, so like in everything, I look at things at how much do they help? Like how much do they help me get an outcome of more revenue, of more output, right? And I would love if AI helped me do that. And I've taken a couple jumps at it. Again, I'm a builder. Like I like to get my hands into things. And I've taken some shots at it, and it hasn't really helped quite yet.
Really?
And I would love for it to get there. I think it can get there. I use AI in helping me code faster, and do research on documentation so that I can build more.
Yeah.
And so it helps there. But as like a full service tool, it hasn't quite gotten there quite yet.
Yeah.
And so I'm optimistic that it's going to help a lot of people like move faster on things. But I'm still, when I get a project where someone's like, hey, we want to automate something, I will absolutely test out AI first and be like, okay, can we like make this work? So a great example is one of my friends. He's like, hey, we send these like reports out to every single customer of our 150 customers every single week based on the actions that we took on their behalf.
Okay.
It takes us a lot of time. And so he's like, can we like get AI to do this? And so we tried it, and it's like, it's a very straightforward task. It's like, it has the same structure every single time. And it's like, no, it's still coming out like really wonky and not really working.
Yeah.
And so I ended up, using AI to code faster so that I could, build that process out and keep it really standardized. But at the end of the day, it really just helped me build the solution faster. It wasn't the solution. And so that's where I'm hoping it can go in the next like year, is become more of a solution in itself rather than just a way that you can create the solutions.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like, you see the AI content, even written out stuff, right? Going back to just Chat GPT, the basic one. You see stuff that's written out on social media or online. It's all the same. Like you said, right? It's all, you could tell when something's written by Chat GPT because it all sounds like, the language that it produces, right? The outputs are similar every time. Where I want to see it kind of similar to you is to get to a point where it's personalized, right? And it's just not there yet. And so I want everyone to be, even listening, just to be cautious about using AI in that way of thinking about it like it's a solution, because we have to be honest with ourselves. It's not there yet. It's not that full solution yet. We still need to customize. We still need to input our personalities to differentiate ourselves from everyone else. So yeah, it's not totally there yet. Totally agree on that. But yeah, are there anything else, like any other advice that you could give to COOs that are listening to this, maybe CMOs who are running a CRM? What's the best advice you can give just to leave them with something?
I mean, at the end of the day, probably just track more data, and look at things from that lens. I think I would, in a CMO situation, it's really not complicated, right? But it is hard in the sense of making sure that you're tracking these things of so I'll give you an example. For a CMO, you could track 3 things more and be running a way better shop than you are right now, which is what channel did a lead come from in a single interaction. And you could really just do first and last. A lot of people want more, but what asset drove that? Was it Levi's video? Was it an ebook, right? And then the last one is what is different about that? And so when you start building buckets of those 2 things, then you get to ask questions like, okay, how is our video performing on Facebook versus Google on the actual revenue generated from this interaction, right? Or, is the close rate higher? You'll start to see really cool stuff where you'll be able to put more spend into
the things that work.
Into things that work. And so
set up conversion tracking.
Yeah, that's right, a huge one. Yeah, and revenue is a huge one that people do not think matters from a tracking perspective. They're finance will handle that, and we'll never touch it. And we don't really care about maybe even profit, right? And so a lot of people don't fully integrate either of those things into their marketing when they're actually trying to build a feedback loop. And so I see it a lot in software where people will, get a new customer and they won't track the lifetime value of that customer at all. And then they'll never tell Facebook about it. They'll never tell Google about it. And they'll say, we got this customer and they never paid us any money. They paid us $1 and never converted. And this one ended up being our biggest customer. And they will say that those are the exact same value of customers to their platforms, right? And now the platform isn't optimizing for good customers. And in one situation, that's totally fine. But as you add that up and build it up, you start making really bad decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how the platforms learn, right?
Yep.
That's how they learn, is by knowing what customers are quality and what are not. Yep. And I feel like that's what you help a lot with. And I'm so glad that I got to pick your brain today because, man, I love hearing what goes on behind the scenes, after people get the video, how that relationship works. You know what I mean? I love the advice you gave. I think actually there's a lot of valuable stuff in here. So yeah, I hope you guys, got a lot of value from this. I hope you enjoyed. But Kevin, is there anything you want to plug or any, social medias, websites?
Not particularly. If you have CRM help, reach out to me on LinkedIn, Kevin Mead. That's about it. Yeah. I'm not very much on the, download my ebook, download my course. Let's have a conversation. Let me help. That's the biggest thing. Yeah.
I mean, guys, Kevin's such a good guy just to even talk with. So reach out to him. He's amazing. Thanks again, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right.